Welcome back. You're now watching the political segment on The Weekend Show. If you watch The Weekend Show, you'll know that over the years, this has been a show which has actually been led by women. But most importantly, if young people in their businesses, if media, if entertainment, if music, Nigerian women are doing amazing in leadership positions globally. It makes you wonder, why do we have a declining number of women in the legislative arm of government? To put it in the words that it is shameful that female voices are constantly being silenced in decision-making in the government. Because for laws to be passed, which affect women, which affect children, which affect the vulnerable people, you need to have inclusion. What better way than to have a reserved seat bill for women? Now, in the past, this has been done in a way where it's just been mentioned some months before the election and then it's put under the table. But we do have a group of people who have come together to make this a priority, to pick this as a hill they are ready to stand on, not die on. And it's something which we are very impressed about and we are fully in support of. But to take this further, they've gone a step further to create a tool, which is the 469 Tracker. And you can find that on 469tracker.com. It is live to be able to track our parliamentarians, the support across the states. We will be having that conversation with the CEO TOS group of companies and the convener of the reserved seat for Women's Bill, Chief Mrs. Osasu Igbenidion Obuche. Good morning, Ma.
Good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Welcome to The Weekend Show, back on The Weekend Show.
Thank you.
I see the work which you've been doing with the reserved seat bill, and when this started, I was like, this is a great idea. This is something which we've seen mentioned in the past, and sometimes even some of the female senators who supported this bill didn't even get to return to the National Assembly. Why is this something which you've decided is a priority and must happen?
Thank you again, Andrew. As you mentioned, women are leading across all spheres. But before I even answer that question, I think let me backtrack a little and intimate our viewers who are not privy to the intricacies of the reserve seats for Women's Bill what's trying to do. Nigeria has a population of over 220 million people. 50% of that are women. In Parliament, we have 469 members at the national level, 991 at the state level. On the national level, you only have about 18 out of 469 who are women. That's less than 4%. At the subnational level, you only have 51 out of 991. So 26 state assemblies out of the 36 do not have women in their parliament. A running joke is that in Jigawa State, the chair of the Women Affairs Committee is a man.
Oh my goodness.
And as you're well aware, in the Senate, only 4 out of 109 senators are women. In the House of Representatives, 2 additional were recently sworn in. It was 14 out of 360. So you cannot legislate for a group of people without having their voices on the table. The lived experiences of women, their compassion, their intrinsic values to bring about quality education for their children, quality health care, to fight infant and maternal mortality, which Nigeria ranks one of the highest in, child malnutrition, are some of the issues that women will be able to bring their lived experiences to when they're legislating, making laws in the national and in the state assemblies. This is why it's important. The bill seeks to add 74 additional seats to the National Assembly. That is 37 in the Senate, 37 in the House of Representatives, which is representative of 1 seat per state and the FCT. And on the subnational level, 3 additional seats per state assembly. So we've been on this campaign now for months, as you know, and each corner of the country, every geopolitical zone, every state, every local government, every ward is now aware about the reserve seats for Women's Bill and the importance of having more women in governance. But most importantly, our lawmakers, who are the first point of contact in terms of voting this bill into law, are also aware that their constituents are demanding of them that they pass this bill into law, because it's not just an elitist issue, it's a grassroots issue, it's a Nigerian issue, it's a women's issue, it's a national issue, it's a democracy issue. You cannot claim to practice democracy when 50% of your population is marginalized marginalized, is sidelined. It just doesn't work that way. And for us to move forward as a country, we need these reserved seats for women, which, by the way, is a sunset clause. It lasts for just 16 years for women to come into the table of decision making so that we can think of more creative ways to develop our nation, so that we improve our economy. The World Bank actually did a report that we can add $229 billion into our gross domestic product in 10 years if we have more women participating in decision making. So this brings me to the 469 tracker, and I know you might have some more questions about that. So the TOS Foundation, who has been leading advocacy for the reserved seats for women's bill, came up with this really cool tool. Because as you know, the foundation is made up of a lot of young people, men, women, girls, boys, and we're tracking the stance of lawmakers on this bill. So we set up a situation room, and these young civic advocates are calling all 469 parliamentarians at the federal level, getting their stance on the bill. We're doing one-on-one lobbying and advocacy with them, and we're feeding this data into this live tool. And you can go on the website, 469tracker.com, to see where your parliamentarians stand. So when you're having conversations with them, you already know, are they favorably disposed to this bill, or are they against it? Then you know what sort of conversations to have to them to flip your state to green. Right now, we're very excited. Most of the states are green, meaning that you have a majority of senators and members of the House of Representatives who are favorably disposed to the bill. So this means that Nigerians, all civic advocates, are doing a phenomenal work in convincing these lawmakers to vote in support of the bill.
So the reason why I believe in this cause is in April, May, I was in Bayelsa in Yenagoa, and I saw a big billboard with the reserved seats bill, and I was like, this has gone beyond when people sit down in Abuja and say they know what matters and what everyone needs. I have seen real advocacy, and I know this for a fact because in our younger days when we're pushing for the Not Too Young to Run bill, while there was a lot of conversation on social media, what actually made that bill pass is exactly what you are doing, advocacy. It's not a battle. It's being able to say, this is important to us, and actually consulting with the legislators individually, the clerks of the House, and across board is very daunting and tasking. On paper and outwardly, we have actually seen that we have more legislators who are saying they are in support. But this isn't without challenges. Do you actually have confidence that they're going to put their votes where their mouth is?
So with the 469 tracker, brilliant question, Andrew. With the 469 tracker, we're able to ensure that promises actually matches up to votes at the end of the day. Because you hear a lot of, you know, oh, I'll support, I'll vote. On the day you're shocked. So this time around, with this accountability tool, we're ensuring that, you know, the promises of these legislators translates to votes. And at the end of the day, the people who voted in the lawmakers are their constituents. And as you said, this is not an elitist campaign. They're getting calls from their constituency telling them that, hey, there's this bill that's being discussed and we're very interested in it. Because another thing that we did is that for our campaign, we set up zonal coordinators. So across the 6 geopolitical zones, the National Secretariat for the Reserved Seats for Women's Bill campaign have their zonal coordinators who then set up state-level coordinators, who then set up local government coordinators, who then set up ward-level coordinators. So this structure that we have built under TOS Foundation has translated the bill to many different languages. You have it in English, you have it in Pidgin, you have it in Ibibio, you have it in Hausa, you have it in Yoruba, you have it in Igbo, you have it in Benin, you have it, so many different languages. So the grassroots understand the importance of the bill. They might not understand, you know, all the numbers that we are demanding or, you know, but they know that it brings about more women in Parliament and on the decision-making table, and they're fully in support of it. Because as I said, the lived experience of women cannot be substituted. A man has no idea and will never have an idea what it is like to carry a pregnancy for 9 months, what it is to go in the labor room and, have contractions for 12 hours in a stretch, right? It doesn't know what it feels like to, live with a child that is maybe suffering, acute malnutrition, and you're looking for ways to either produce breast milk and fend for him or her. So there are so many lived experiences that women bring that cannot be substituted by another gender. So this is why it's important. And this education orientation that we have taken to the grassroots is what has caused this organic demand for the passage of the reserved seats for Women's Bill.
I think we have a map with this, which should be on the screen any moment now, and I want to see that. But one of the things which caught my attention, and you've also mentioned, is accountability.
Yes.
I know you're someone who is very big on holding people accountable, and
Yes.
that's something which we do. So this is a bit of naming and shaming, and this goes to the Senate of the National Assembly. Last week, there was a bill which mentioned abortion in the National Assembly. And this wasn't fully discussed because it was stepped down in totality for more conversation. And this is the reason why this bill is important. You have just about 4 women in the Senate. Yeah. Senator Natasha wanted to speak about it. We have some information. So for members of the public, you can see the 469tracker.com, where you can see there's a timer. It gives you a whole map. It's fully on the screen, where just if you're at home, go on your phone, type 469tracker.com so that you can see this while we're having this conversation. But back to what we're saying, and I would like the map on the screen as well. Senator Natasha wanted to have some input in this conversation. The Senate President, after some insistence, had said, okay, Senator Natasha, you should speak. But Senator Adams Oshimole came up to say, if the gavel has been hit and this has been suspended, then we shouldn't break our rules. The problem is you have 4 women out of over 70, 80 men who were in the room. This conversation wasn't had. And this talks about female health care. It talks about maternity. We know how many Nigerian women die as a result of childbirth.
Yes.
I've heard from women generally say, your life is never the same after childbirth.
Never.
And it's not unique to one person. It's different for everybody. This conversation wasn't had on the floor because they say for further discussion and interaction. If these senators are saying we support this bill, why do they keep shutting down such conversations? Also the same way we've seen with the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill. How do we, especially men like myself, hold the National Assembly accountable? Because that's what I'm doing now. Yeah. You say you support this bill, but you're not having this conversation. How can we hold the National Assembly accountable, even now, pending when this bill is passed into law?
You know, the statistics for women's health in Africa, but particularly Nigeria, which calls itself the giant of Africa, is really goring. It's heartbreaking. 1 in 3 women die in childbirth in Nigeria.
Wow.
That's a national emergency. As I said earlier, we have one of the highest numbers of child malnutrition in Nigeria and maternal and infant mortality. We're not technically or formally, in war, right? We are not in crisis. So why is this happening? And what are the solutions to fix it, right? So that is why organizations like mine are looking at what is the root cause of this issue and how can we profess sustainable solutions beyond the 10th Assembly to put a stop to these ills that are plaguing our society. Our women and children are most vulnerable. So this is just one of the tools that we're using to achieve that. I was in an interview yesterday on a sister station, and the interviewer asked a very pertinent question. She said, aside the reserved seats for Women's Bill, are there any other pieces of legislation that are being considered that will work in harmony with this bill to ensure that there is more impact when it passes into law? And there are so many. There are electoral reform bills that are being considered. There are state policing, fiscal federalism bills that are being considered. And I think that this is the time for citizens to really wake up, to, as you said, demand accountability from the lawmakers that you have voted into power. That's number one. And number two, educate yourself on the processes that are currently ongoing. The constitutional amendment process right now that is happening, how many citizens are aware of it? For the public hearings that happened at the 6 geopolitical zones, they had 6 in the Senate and 2 per geopolitical zone in the House of Representatives. We had representatives there to make our case for the passage of the reserve seats
I was
bill.
about to ask you about the public hearing and how that went.
And at the national level, we mobilized over 1,000 women, girls, youth, men to also go to the public hearing. We had a walk from the Unity Fountain in Abuja to Transcorp Hilton way ahead, and we made a presentation at the national public hearing. We are active citizens. You cannot improve the state of our country without being an active citizen. You might complain, you might cry, you might shout, but at the end of the day, if you are not doing that in the rooms that matter, if you are not doing that to the hearing of those who you have elected to represent you, then you are just talking within your echo chamber. So this is why accountability is important. I wish this map would come up on the screen so we can demonstrate how TOS Foundation, through this accountability app, is showcasing the stance of these lawmakers. And we know that this hasn't been created before. This is a technology that we've invented to ensure that we don't have the outcome of the past assemblies. Because as you alluded to, in the 8th Assembly, there was the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill that failed. In the 9th Assembly, there were the 5 gender bills that failed. God bless her, former First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Hajia Aisha Buhari, went to the National Assembly on the day of the vote for the gender bills in the 9th Assembly, and they didn't pass it. It was a slap in the face. So this time around, we are doing things differently, and also we are in partnership, you know, with these stakeholders. TOS Foundation signed an agreement with the Nigerian Governors Forum, which willed a lot of positive influence on the federal lawmakers. We signed an agreement also with the Nigerian Governors Spouses Forum, which have been very active advocates. In fact, the wives of governors today are calling all their lawmakers in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, to intimate them on the intricacies of the bill. We also signed an agreement with the Deputy Speaker's office, who is the sponsor of the bill, helping out with the advocacy. The Speaker is a fantastic he for she. In every room he goes in, whether it's internationally or locally, he's speaking about the need to have more women in power, championing the reserve seats for women's bill. Also, the Speaker's wife, as the leader of the House of Representatives Spouses Association. Then you also have the Senate President, which TOS Foundation led a delegation to, and he emphatically said that he will support the bill as well as other leadership of the Senate. So this time around, you see a cross-sectoral, you know, hand-holding, which are all speaking in support of the reserve seats for women's bill. We just had the 6th edition of TOS Symposium 2 weeks ago, less than, and we had His Eminence, the Sultan of Sokoto. We had the representative of the Oni of Ife. We had the Khan president. We had the Olu of Warri, represented by his wife, the Olori. We had so many traditional rulers, cultural leaders, faith leaders, legislators, diplomatic partners, all come together to re-emphasize the importance of the bill. The vice president was also ably represented. And everyone is speaking in one voice saying, this is a reform whose time has come. We need more women. And it's not just about shoring up the number of women, but women with the capacity, women with the competence, women with the lived experience, which I keep on repeating, who will bring their creativity, their innovation, their style into governance. And we believe that this will directly correlate to the improvement of our economy, the improvement of our markets and communities, better health care for our children, our women, our men, and better social amenities at large. So this is why we so passionately advocate for the passage, and we are sure that this time around the end result will be different, that this bill will be passed into law, because even the President and the First Lady have also vocally told these lawmakers that under the Renewed Hope agenda, we cannot continue to campaign about better infrastructure and all these other stuff without having women on the table. So they are also fully in support of it. So we are not only hopeful, but we are optimistic that this time around this bill will see the light of day when it's posted on the floor for third reading.
Something which gives me confidence is the Deputy Speaker of the House of Reps, who's
Yes.
also sponsor. And I say this as an outsider. Even within his staff strength, you can see that he has appointed and enabled women to take leadership positions, even before this bill was a conversation.
Correct.
And so he's walking the talk, literally. But I know advocacy and these processes are expensive, Osasu.
Yes.
I know it is expensive, and this is just the beginning. How are you and your organization and the consortium of companies working on this, how are you managing to deal with it, and what are the challenges you face currently with this process?
That's a very important question. It does cost a lot of money to run an advocacy campaign, but thankfully, I say to myself before I take on any task, how do we build a structure to last? I am the CEO of TOS Group of Companies. We have holdings in media, we have holdings in real estate, we have holdings in downstream oil and gas, in hospitality. So I already, thankfully, had the pool of funds to be able to say, okay, this is our philanthropic arm, and we're able to at least release a certain percent, of our quarterly budget to this initiative. So TOS Foundation started this on its own. Right? When we embarked on this campaign, I think back in March, we were able to put together a budget to say, okay, let's build a website, Reserve Seats for Women's Bill, reserveseatsforwomen.org. Let's do a logo, Reserve Seats. I support the Reserve Seats campaign. Let's have a town hall. We started. Then other partners actually saw what we were doing and say, hey, you're doing phenomenal work. How do we support? Okay, we'll bring 10% of your budget. We'll bring 20% of your budget. And that's how we were able to build momentum. And as you mentioned, the Deputy Speaker, who is the sponsor of the bill, who is also the chairman of the Constitution Review Committee in the House of Representatives, has been supportive in his own capacity. He's been able to say, okay, we see you're doing fantastic work as an advocacy group. Here, we'll give you a little support to continue to amplify the work that you are doing. So this is how we've been able to sustain it over time. But I'll tell you, it's not easy.
I know.
Not everyone who has the desire to do this have the funds to continue. So that's why we must also applaud our diplomatic partners who are able to identify the importance, of having more women, and they're saying, hey, we'll support you. Regardless of how minimal it is, to continue to amplify, work like that you're doing. So I would urge other organizations who are also championing similar reforms to just begin, right? If you have, even if it's a limited pool of funds, begin, let your voices be heard, and people will be able to recognize what it is you're doing and bring their, according to Nigeria, their widow's mite to support the work that you're doing. But I think it's very important that for Nigerians, we champion causes that promote our country and further the development. We shouldn't wait for outside partners to do it for us. We shouldn't wait until everything is all in place and we have all the resources. Just start where you are. It could even be amplifying a tweet on X. It could even be reposting something on Instagram, because another thing that we have done is we have used pop culture, media, our celebrity influencers to be able to amplify this campaign. And sometimes all it takes is data, right? 500 or 1,000 naira data.
True.
And we have like a Tomike, who is the brand ambassador of the bill, or a Kelechi, a Nikode, or Jemima, or Sunday, and you just interact with their post and send that to your lawmakers, or even as simple as picking up the phone call and calling your lawmakers to reiterate the importance of this. So everyone has a role to play. Don't wait until somebody comes and gives you fund to champion something that is beneficial to you. Just do it in your own capacity, and you'll see other people will gather, to support the work that you're doing.
Assessor, I want to say well done. I'm proud of you and the work which you do and which you are doing. as the weekend show, we'll make sure that between now and for the next 3 months, we'll give 5 minutes every Saturday to talk about the reserved seats bill.
Yay.
That's what we will do. For those of you at home, you can see it on the screen. There's a 469tracker.com. We couldn't show the map, but once you open the website, that's the first thing you would see. I went straight to check for my state, Benue State. Immediately I got the link. But besides
Is your state
that,
green or red?
I wouldn't say that. Let's let people go check that. But I'm very impressed. My state is green, but very impressed with the number of green states which I've seen. But for Nigerians, just go on this to help with accountability. But even besides this, there's the reservedseats.org website where you can go. Do you want to say it?
Yes, www.reserveseatsforwomen.org. So you go on the website and familiarize yourself with the intricacies of the bill, what it intends to do, and why it's important. So that way, when you're calling your lawmakers, you're equipped with the correct information to properly advocate for the bill. And equally as important is the 469tracker.com, so you see where your parliamentarians stand as of today. As Andy said, his state is green, so well done to the lawmakers in Benue State. But this doesn't mean that it will remain green till the day of voting. This is why you must call them to commend them for supporting the bill thus far, but also continue to re-emphasize the importance of sustaining that support and seeing their promises through to the day of voting on the National Assembly, which is in a matter of days. We have a timer on the website. The vote is tentatively scheduled to hold on the day on the website stipulates. However, it might change, down the line, but the tracker will keep you updated on whatever new information we get. And this is a live tool. So the more information we get, the more information we feed into it, and you're always updated and kept abreast of any new development, both with your lawmakers and for the day of voting.
And it doesn't stop there. Once this has been passed, we will continue to advocate for women to run for office and support them because, look, when you look at women economic empowerment, women are more likely to repay loans. Women are more likely to stay on the voting queues to vote when elections happen. And it's only fair that we have inclusion. And this isn't too much to ask for. That's much we can take on this segment. We'll take a quick break. When we return, entertainment is waiting for you on social media with I Should Be, and after that we'll talk about defections in political parties. Asasu Igbenidion Oguche, Chief Mrs. Thank you so much for this and well done.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for all your support, and may God bless you all.
Thank you. Take a quick break. When we return, more on The Weekend Show.